Historical trauma is experiences that are shared by communities that can result in cumulative emotional and psychological wounds that are carried across generations. In 1945, Holocaust, the biggest genocide in history, took place in Germany and through all Europe. The Germans, under the Nazi regime and their allies, killed nearly 2 out of every European Jews as the result of the Endlösung, or the final solution. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, an estimated 250,000 Jewish survivors found shelter in the displaced person camps. Now Holocaust survivors set forth to their newest journey, a quest to a new life, home, and families. And Holocaust survivors have various ways to deal with their trauma. These various stories of the Holocaust survivor are now being told to our generation through many works, ranging from movies to TV series. Netflix, a subscription-based streaming service for TV shows such as movies and series, also offers a lot of series and movies with these themes. One of them is Netflix series Unorthodox. My name is Jasmine Puspa, and today I'm going to show you how Netflix Unorthodox depicts historical trauma. Unorthodox is a 4-part miniseries that told a story of a young Jewish woman who flees her ultra-Orthodox community in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and tries to navigate a new life in the secular world. In Unorthodox, we see how two different communities, one in Berlin and another in Brooklyn, cope with the tragedies that have shaped them. The first community is Satmar Hasidic community in Williamsburg, New York, where Esther Saviro grew up as a teenager. Satmar community is a secretive community of Hasidic Jews established by a rabbi who had fled Satumar during the Holocaust. As a community that adheres to beliefs and tradition, it can be seen that one of the coping strategies used by this community is emotional focus coping, with a positive reappraisal form, which explained by Lazarus and Volksman theory of coping strategy as a form of coping that describes individual efforts to create new meaning by focusing on personal development and sometimes involving religious themes. This can be seen from how Satmar Hasidic community gave new meaning to the Holocaust and their community through teachings and a series of religious stories. We also see in this scene how Satmar Jews draw on past trauma to create fear for its members of bad things outside their community. Many Orthodox Jews believe that the way to undo the trauma of the Holocaust is to repopulate. That goes the same with the Satmar Hasidic community. ST believes in what has always been taught, that the task of their current generation is to replace the lives of their 6 million Jewish family who were victims of the Holocaust. The problem with this way of dealing with trauma, as we see it through ST's eyes, is it creates a domino effect in the form of trauma that is consciously passed down from generation to generation. Berlin, meanwhile, has a very different ways to deal with their trauma. Unorthodox represent the city of Berlin as a liberal and diverse city where everyone, especially the younger generation, can do what they want, whenever and with whoever they want. Berlin, as the Nazis' former stronghold, the city that once was the epicenter of suffering, countered its past trauma by celebrating joy and reclaiming some of its character that the Nazis tried to extinguish. Positive reappraisal strategy is also used in Berlin with creating new meaning by focusing on positive personal development. On Esti's first excursion with her new friends, she ventures upon what is to her community back in Berlin the worst memories ever.
The conference where the Nazis decided to kill the Jews in concentration camps took place in 1942 in that villa.
Can you swim in this lake?
Oh, the lake is just a lake.
By swimming in the lake, Esti, her friends, and the people of Berlin are doing what the previous generation could not. For them, celebrating freedoms is a way of honoring and commemorating historical memories that are far more useful and positive rather than struggling with feelings of guilt. Esti, who grew up with historical trauma, that stemming from the roots of her family lineage must face conflicts within her as she sees the historical trauma of her old community from a much different perspective in her new community in Berlin. James Marcia used 4 identity development statuses to explain this identity crisis. Identity diffusion occurs when adolescents neither explore nor commit to any identities. An identity foreclosure occurs when individual commits to an identity without exploring options. And a moratorium is a state in which adolescents are actively exploring options but have not yet made commitment. And an individuals who have explored different options, discovered their purpose, and have made identity commitments are in the state of identity achievement. In this series, we are going to see how Esti's identity developed through her journey in 2 different communities. The Satmar Hasidic community has a very strong family tie with rules that have been in place for a very long time. In this makes Esti, who has born and raised in this community, believe that these rules and traditions are the right role and identity for her.
I won't ever need anywhere else to go. This is what I want.
The rules and beliefs of the Satmar Hasidic community, which are rooted in a patriarchal culture and strict adherence to gender roles, make Esti feel even more depressed and want to get out of her role. In this condition, Esti experiencing a crisis in her commitment as a member of the Satmar Hasidic community. Esti, who is increasingly unsure of her role and identity, tries to find a new life and she decided to go to Berlin. Esti, who is used to strict rules, struck by the individual freedom in Berlin. Everyone can express themselves as freely as possible, from public display of affection and the way they dress. This is because pleasure rather than procreation is the goal. Esti begins to realize that the world is not as black and white as he has been taught. And by that, Esti started to change her look as the first way to finding the freedom of her new self in Berlin. And at the end of her journey, Esti finally achieved her identity by accepting her newfound self in Berlin. She throws away her old beliefs and unleashes her pain and trauma using the creativity that she has always longed for. Unorthodox depict trauma sensitively and beautifully, not only from the stories but also to the details like the sets and the costumes. And now we're going to see how Unorthodox shows contrast between 2 different communities, one in Brooklyn and one in Berlin. The use of lighting that tends to be dim and even dark, and with scenes mostly being shot indoor, depicts the life of the Satmar Hasidic community, which is full of all the rules that are restrictive, closed, and separated from the others as a very monotonous life. In contrast to the dim lighting and mostly indoor shooting of scenes in the Satmar Hasidic community, bright lighting and outdoor shooting depicts Berlin as a city that are open to everyone and full of new hope. Through Esti's eye, this depiction shows her new view of German and the emergence of hope for her to make a new life. The contrasts are also shown by the colorful colors of the character costume in Berlin and the black and white costume in the Satmar community, and also the building in Berlin that are more of an open space with more unique architecture depict the dynamic of Berlin. Orthodox does not diverse these 2 communities in good or evil and right or wrong. This series shows that some people struggles in Berlin the same way that the members of the Satmar community in Brooklyn thrives. It can also be concluded that the trauma of every person is complex and individual, not as simple as black or white. As this journey that shows 2 different perspectives on German could also be an alternative narrative to show Germany's effort to atone for the wounds of the Holocaust tragedy by becoming a liberal country that is open to any culture and religion.